Hello there! Today I'm going to be going through a campaign battle, much in the same fashion like I would a multiplayer battle, talking about tactics, strategies, decisions and why they're made, and everything that goes through my head when playing said battle. So hopefully you can learn something from this. I thought this would be fun to do with campaign because there is a lot more variables and stuff, so got a battle here with Cathay. Now I tend to play a fairly traditional style of Total War with balanced armies. I don't really use cheese or doomstacks or anything. So I'm coming into this battle with a front line of Jade Warriors and a bunch of missiles, artillery, a little bit of cav, typical Cathay army basically. Now I'm facing the greenskins in this one, but I didn't realise the main army was just a single lord and there's two bigger reinforcing armies. So I foolishly set myself up to fight this one little guy, but of course I don't want to do that. It's these two reinforcing armies that I need to worry about. You can see there's a lot of Savage Orcs in there. They can hit pretty hard and bash their way through front lines pretty well. So we've got to try and weaken them before they reach our front lines preferably, and luckily we've got just the tools to do that. So I start moving my main army up, thinking that there's going to be a full army that'll reveal itself, and then I realize that the enemy main army is just a single lord. Now the thing about this is that I could rush up and just kill this lord really quickly, and I'll actually win the battle. So if we just delete him before the reinforcements arrive, we'll win. But then it means that those two armies won't take any damage, and well, at this stage I'd like to take those armies out so they're not a problem anymore. And I'm more than equipped to do so. So I'm going to leave this little guy alone. I'm going to let him live for now. We're going to get rid of him later as he may just start casting vindictive glare all over the place. But for now, we need to worry about these two armies of Savage Orcs. Now we've got a pretty good spot here because they're reinforcing through a very narrow passage here. So we're going to be able to funnel them all into a small space. So we're going to be using the terrain a lot in this battle. So the Savage Orcs are going to come this way and they're going to be funneled into this small area, and then they're going to have to go through the water, which is another piece of terrain that we can use. So if you don't know, when infantry goes through water, it gets about 20% less melee attack and its speed reduced by about 20% as well. At least that's what it was in Warhammer 2, so we'll assume it's the same in Warhammer 3. So infantry gets debuffed when fighting in water, and what this is going to do for us is it's going to buy us more time to blast the Savage Orcs down with missiles because they'll be moving more slowly. So this is where I'm going to put my Jade Warriors. They're going to try and hold the Savage Orcs in the water as much as possible for as long as possible. And then all my missiles will be sat behind, just gunning the Savage Orcs down as they come in with that 20% reduced speed. So that's the plan. We're using the terrain in a couple of ways. One of them is kind of the given just by the direction that the reinforcing armies are coming from. But if you're using a missile-heavy army, using water to slow enemies down can be a good way to go. And it's just a little extra advantage to buy more time for missiles to fire. I've also got a couple of units of cavs just to try and disrupt missiles if need be. And we can see that the reinforcements are about a minute away now, so I'm trying to rush my ass over there as quickly as possible. If I'd paid more attention on the pre-battle and deployment screen, I probably would have just put my army over here in the first place, so I didn't have to run over like this. But this is kind of a good example of how you have to be in battles. You have to be ready to adapt and change on the fly, depending on what the enemy throws at you and from where. Now moving these Jade Lancers up, I did have the intention to charge them in just to slow the enemy down and keep them pinned back there for a little while, so it gave the rest of my army more time to get into position. Sending Zhao over now to come and sort out this little lord as well. There he goes with his vindictive glare. As I say, we needed to wait till the reinforcements arrived before we could kill him, otherwise we win the battle before we do the damage that we wanted to. Now, I'm going to pull my Jade Lancers back here as it's looking like I'm not going to need to try and hold them back so much. My army's starting to get into position, and I do have the artillery, which I need to get firing as soon as possible because the enemy is now coming through that narrow little choke point, and as you can see, it is just absolute glory waiting to happen to bombard this area and hit all these lowly armored Savage Orcs back to Gork and Mork. So I'm going to try and get that firing as quickly as possible. I've also got some crane gunners that'll be able to do some good damage to these across the river. In comes the artillery fire, and it is going to do some pretty glorious damage just on the first volley. A fair few misses, but a lot of orcs in a small space, easy to get. But looking at my plan here, you can see it's kind of falling behind. I'm not quite in position. The orcs are nearly here. I'm getting short on time. A couple of Jade Warriors still all the way back here, a couple up front. But my Jade Lancers here, they ended up getting caught by the enemy Lord, who's faster than them, so they ended up fighting him, which I didn't see right away. But I've got these two half-dead units of Peasant Spears. Now, I'm going to sacrifice these to try and slow the enemy down. I'm just going to charge them in, put them in the way. They're not really going to do a lot of damage, but they can hold a few units in place for a little while and buy my army time to get into position. But while they are held there anyway, they are going to get shot by my missiles as well. So potentially there is going to be a good bit of damage done to them. And as you'll see, I actually managed to gather quite a few units stuck behind them, affording my missiles time to blast them down. You can see there's about 4 units, 5 units being held back there. My fire rain rocket's still coming down, doing some good damage before the enemy arrives. So far, we're looking pretty good. We're holding up this side with just these two crappy peasant spearman units. My lancers are broken and this right side is advancing fast. I'm trying to get in the way of them as much as possible so they can't get to my missiles. My missiles are going to start blasting away. But as we can see, like I said, these two peasant spears are doing some good work, holding this side back, sacrificing themselves for the greater good, allowing my missiles to get some fire on them, the artillery to get some fire on them, just staggering their attack a bit so I have a little less to deal with at a time. So far, we're okay. This could have definitely been going better if we were more ready and in position. Trying to be careful with my longbow here. I was going to charge them in to get after these, but I decided to let the artillery just blow them up for now. But very often with these kind of Greenskins army, the AI likes to commit this terrible offense of stacking and not flanking, which means it's pretty much just gifting us their units on a silver platter, which is quite literally probably where they're going to end up, as we're about to cook them with Zhao's Fire Breath spell. So my boys are holding okay so far. My peasant spears on the left have finally broken, so the Savage Orcs over there are going to come in. Here comes the Fire Breath though. Going to absolutely annihilate a bunch of units. Zhao's going to come in as well with Fear and Terror, I believe, and we're going to get 5 units gone nice and quick. So the big damage of that spell has caused a lot of leadership penalties to those units, and as Savage Orcs have low leadership anyway, that's how we've got rid of them. And that's really how you beat the Greenskins, is you break their leadership rather than trying to out-damage them or survive them. But in this case, we do have a good holding unit that's good at surviving these kind of heavy damage attacks. Jade Warriors, they've got the bonuses when they're standing still. They get some charge defense, they get some extra armor. We're getting the battle harmony by having the missiles and the melee units near each other, so they're a nice sturdy front line, although you can see a couple of them starting to thin out, one of them down to about half health, so those Savage Orcs likely would have got through them eventually, especially if they were able to attack on that left side all at the same time. We had those spearmen holding them back, of course. They really probably saved us and helped us wear those Savage Orcs down so that when they did get to my Jade Warriors, they weren't so effective. So that's why I was trying to use the water to slow them down, to buy me more time to damage them, so that when they did reach my Jade Warriors, they weren't going to be as effective because their unit was half beaten up or half dead already. And then it's just a case of trying to inflict some massive leadership penalties on them. Magic is of course a good way to do that, as we saw, but you could hammer an anvil with units if you can get some cavalry behind the Savage Orcs while they're fighting your front line. That can do some good leadership penalties, and you'll get the Savage Orcs running for the hills, like so. And I'm going to keep this battle going as long as I can so that I can keep damaging these units, keep shooting them, so that when they get back on the campaign map, they're going to have less. So even when a battle is ended, you should always try and kill as many enemies as possible before you hit end battle. Going to bombard this little area with artillery fire as well. So this plan mostly came together because of our use of the terrain. We had the narrow pass that we funneled them through here that was kind of just lucky that they reinforced from there. And then they moved into the water where we could slow them down and blast them up with missiles as much as possible. So all about getting them in a small space and then gunning them down. Because we could have stayed over here. I could have just formed up over here on the land and waited for them to come to me, but then they wouldn't have been all clumped up in that small space because they probably would have spread out as they approached me, which meant my fire rain rocket, which is generally pretty inaccurate, wouldn't have been as effective, so we wouldn't have been able to damage as many units as we did with the artillery. And then of course we had the water, which slowed them down and just bought us that little bit of extra time, which we wouldn't have had if we just fought this on land. So much easier just to bombard this area and then wait for them to come through the river. If we had formed up back on the land as well, they may have had more time to spread out and they wouldn't have stacked on themselves so much, which meant when I used that fire spell like I did earlier, it probably wouldn't have been as effective as there would have only been a couple of units stacked up rather than 4 or 5. So just another benefit to kind of keeping them pinned there in that pass, not giving them a lot of room to maneuver. So let's just take a look at who did the heavy lifting there. Let's look at some numbers. Damage value for Zhao, 2,400, pretty good. That's obviously that big fire spell, maybe taking out that little lord as well. Bit of work from the frontline infantry. They were mostly holding stuff there, not big damage dealers. A couple of spear units, they of course sacrificed themselves. Crane gunners doing some work there, 700 damage, nice. Peasant archers, not doing fantastical amounts of damage, but a couple of them doing okay. Cavalry doing a little bit as well. The artillery though, another star MVP player there, 2,700, doing a lot of damage when we had them all clumped up in that small passage. That was the key to victory here. Not that it was impossible to win if we'd fought them out in the open field necessarily, but always good to take advantage of these little things that are available because they can help your army win and be in better shape at the end of the battle than if you didn't use them. So good to keep an eye out for these kind of terrain advantages and make good use of them. Let me know if you like this kind of thing. I hope you've enjoyed this though. Thanks for watching. See you in the future. Yeah.